All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Greg Palast. Greg is an investigative journalist, a filmmaker, a New York Times best-selling author. His latest book is Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, all of which and more you can find at gregpalast.com. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Hey, Matt.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, you have a new DVD out that just got released, and it's called Vultures and Vote Rustlers. It's sort of an expansion of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. Tell us all about the DVD.
Well, it's not only, I should also say that for those of you who are plastophobic, it's also available as a download film only from my foundation, not-for-profit Foundation for Investigative Reporting. So you get that at gregpalast.com. And if you don't watch the trailer at gregpalast.com, you've missed something. The important thing is that this film, for those who don't know Greg Palast, I do investigative reporting, the old-fashioned gumshoe, secret documents through the transom, undercover, secret recordings, the whole Columbo shtick. I do that for BBC television, therefore it's banned in the United States, effectively, really is. And so if you want to see these reports, this is the only way to get them, download them or get the DVD. The point is that there's about 8 major investigations in here, and that includes the whack cartoons by Ted Rall. And I've always liked cartoons, before, in a movie, before I see a movie. So I figure I just stick them right in mind. They go from my story where I go to check out the real story, the Deepwater Horizon explosion, which actually takes me to the Caspian Sea where I get busted. Then I'm off up the Congo River where I'm hunting the big boys who are stuffing Chris Christie with cash. He's not actually overweight. It's just that all the cash he's carrying around from the Koch brothers and a guy called Paul the Vulture Singer. So you'll meet the Vulture, and I go from the Congo to Bosnia. We hunt for something called the Hamsa in Liberia after Nelson Mandela sets us off on a hunt for the guy stealing the aid money to Africa. And we catch him. And let's see, we've got good old Larry Summers in there, and the World Trade Organization, inside documents, and a few honey shots of Miss Bad Penny. It's a lot of fun.
No, I've watched the film, and it's great. It's a lot of, very entertaining. You're a funny guy, Greg.
I'm tired of that, man. The Pulitzer Committee actually said, "You're not a journalist. You're an entertainer." But I won the British.
You're not funny. Okay, yeah. I retract it. You are not funny. You are the least funny person on the planet, Greg.
All right, you can't say that. I am, but it's because the situation is funny. I mean, the fall of America, the corrosion of the planet, the mass thievery worldwide, and the choking and rapine of Ma Nature. It does have its really humorous side, and if I didn't bring humor into these things, I'd be in tears all the time,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the things that you cover are so absurd. They really shouldn't actually be existing in any decent world, but unfortunately we don't live in a decent world. Let's go into detail on a few of these stories, because they're all really interesting, but there's one I want to talk about. You mentioned Nelson Mandela, who of course recently died. You report on Liberia, and so talk a little bit about the vultures in Liberia. And people have probably heard you on this show before talking about vultures, but just let's start out. What exactly is a vulture, because other than the actual bird? Because if people haven't heard the interviews before, they may not actually understand what this is.
A dead vulture, if you have a nice view of these little carrion eaters, is a financier, a speculator who buys up old debts of poor nations, like old Congo war debts for literally 1 penny on the dollar, and then goes out and sues and tries to get the money back, not the penny that they put into it, but 100, 200, 300%. So they can make 10,000% profit, these guys, off the backs of poor nations. That's the nice version. The unnice version, which you'll find in the so in other words, they're just scum-eating predators who take the medicine money from the Congo. That's a nice view. Then the darker view of them is what I uncovered, which is massive bribery, threats, intimidation, and that's what they use, and political buyouts. So, for example, the number one donor, the number one organizer number one donor in New York for the Republican Party is this guy, Paul Singer, known as the Vulture. He's known as the Vulture because I gave him that name. And and for BBC, he had seized hold of the Congo, its old war debts. Remember the thief Mobutu? Mobutu borrowed what he couldn't steal. He borrowed a bunch of money, and so then the U.S. government and the British government, and Europeans, decided to write off the debts of the Congo when they created democracy, and but the money never got the money to cover the debts never got to the Congolese people. The reason is, and they have a lot of resources like cobalt, the reason is that Paul the Vulture Singer swooped in and said, wait a minute, I've got these old bonds. And no, you're not going to give me my 1 cent back. I want 200 cents on the dollar. So for like $10 million, he was asking $500 million. Now that would literally bankrupt the Congo. And so he actually sucked up a tremendous amount of the money originally given the Congo to fight a cholera epidemic and build water systems. Nice guy, huh? And the way he got, now listen to how these guys get a hold of that. In the case of one of his compatriots, a guy whose name is, by the way, Goldfinger, the real Goldfinger. and I just want you to know, you'll meet the real Goldfinger in the film. The real Goldfinger makes the movie Goldfinger look like a Girl Scout. I mean, this guy is. I mean, when you're talking about literally taking.
I've met some pretty tough Girl Scouts before, but you're correct that Michael Sheehan is a bad man.
If you see a Girl Scout in the gutter with cookie crumbs all over her, look for Goldfinger. That's metaphoric, by the way. I don't want to hear from his lawyers again. Goldfinger. So what he did was he paid a $3 million bribe to the Prime Minister of Bosnia. Now, what does this have to do with the Congo? Congo, during its civil war, owed money to Bosnia during its civil war. And, where everyone dying, getting murdered, this guy pays $3 million to the Prime Minister of Bosnia to give him control of the debts owed by the Congo. Then he seizes a shipment of cobalt on the high seas. This is piracy, right? Mm-hmm. And says, well, I'm taking this. Okay. $90 million and worth of stuff. Now, $90 million in the Congo, that's you have to understand. We had about 4 million people die there. They're still dying because of cholera. And he's taken the money. And now, after some reports that his activities are made illegal, not in the United States, but in most of the world. So he grabs this stuff on the high seas. And so now I am hunting. I go up the Congo River. I go to Bosnia and find out about the bribery, and that the Prime Minister has now been indicted for a crime, for the bribe, but that suddenly the papers just disappear. And so I take this. So this is part of the type of story that we operate. Then what I do is I do stakeouts. I stake that Goldfinger at dawn. I should say I always send Ms. Bad Penny out to do the casing, because whenever there's a snowstorm, I'd stay warm in the car. We jump these guys with the stuff, and say, okay, Mr. Vulture, Greg Palast, BBC TV. Something you don't have in the United States, which is we actually stake out the bad guys and jump them. If they won't come on the air, what happens with CBS, like if you do 60 Minutes show, 60 Minutes talk to me several times doing their stuff. Forget it. It's their stuff is thin and silly, And if someone won't, for example, come on camera, they say, "Gee, they won't talk to us." Well, if someone won't talk to me, I'll hunt them down, and I'll talk to them, and that's usually what you see on the camera.